So let's talk about the ternary operator. Now, before we do, let's consider the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned about the if statement, the else statement, and the else if statement. Now, the same thinking and the same conditional flow applies with what we call the ternary statement. Now, in JavaScript, there is one ternary statement, and it's made up of 3 parts. So let's take an example of const number, and we'll give it that value of 99 again. Now, in the previous lesson, we did something like this, where we said, if our number equals the number 1, then we assigned a result. So let's go ahead and actually add that result. That result will have a text value of 1. Now, underneath, we can then console log out our result and print this out in the console. Now, because our constant of number is 99, we don't actually see anything here. Now, the next thing that we learned was the else statement, and this essentially means that there is no match. So again, we can go and bind that to our result, and here we have no match. Now, because we are using this pattern of some kind of variable and we're basing some conditional logic here, we're always binding to the same result variable and then logging it out here. So with the ternary statement, it's actually a nice one-liner which can be combined with other JavaScript statements to sort of clean up this chunk of code. Now, it might be that you'll see this momentarily and you'll think how much better it can make your JavaScript programming. However, it's good to know that you shouldn't really go over the top with using the ternary statement because it can get quite confusing the more you use it. So to demonstrate this, what we can do is start using our ternary statement straight off. Now, to use the ternary statement, it's made up of a condition. Now, if there is a condition which is true, we then run this piece of code. Otherwise, we run this piece of code. So this is kind of your if statement, similar to this section here. And this is your if the condition was true, much like this. And finally, this piece is this piece. So what we can actually do is remove this and swap it out. We'll take this no match and also swap it out here. Now, instead of using a whole if block for this, we can take this number 1 and replace our condition. So that was the syntax. We have the condition true and false. And all we do is provide some kind of expression here. And with this question mark operator, this becomes our truth block. Otherwise, this is our else block. Now, you may have spotted something. We could actually change our let over to a constant because we are not rebinding in this sense. Now, what we can do is blow away our if statement. Now, when we save this, we're going to get the exact same happen. We're going to see no match. If we go ahead and change this over to the number 1, we can see the number 1. Now, just to verify that we're actually working with the same piece of code, we can edit our ternary statement and we see this being printed out in our console. So that's a nice introduction to the ternary statement. What we could actually do is just show you how to use a JavaScript expression alongside this. What we could do is create a string and then concatenate the result of our expression. So we could say the number is, and then we can go ahead and save that out. Now, you may be wondering why nothing's actually working here. So this is an interesting way that JavaScript works, and it's kind of to do with this plus operator and how we're adding this ternary statement to our JavaScript code. Now, everything changes once we wrap these in brackets, and we'll save this out, and we have the number is 1. So why did that happen? If we change this over to 99, we'll say the number is, and then we see no match. So the important piece, which I've just mentioned, was this bracket here. So this creates an expression on its own, and you may see this being used, and it's a very nice and short syntax, which we can use when we don't need to create a whole block with a variable and the let keyword and then override it based on something. So this is a nice pattern that we can keep nice and short. Now, due to the way that JavaScript works, this is a ternary expression, so we need to wrap it in brackets for it to be evaluated on its own. So this section inside the brackets will evaluate, and then the result of that is then going to be added or concatenated because we know that the plus operator either provides addition when used on two numbers, or it will concatenate, which is essentially merge two strings together. So here we get a resulting string, either one or no match, and then we add it to this string as well. Now, I also mentioned that it's a good idea not to get too carried away when using the ternary expression as well. Now, much like our else if statements, we can actually start nesting ternary statements as well. Now, we'll do it for the purposes of the exercise of this, but you'll slowly see how it becomes a little bit confusing. So underneath our result, we'll say that we have another number. We'll give this one a value of 99, and then we'll have another constant, and we'll just call this another result. Now, we're doing this to avoid, obviously, naming conflicts with variables which we already have. Now, what I'm going to do is just bump this on a new line, because it'll be a bit easier to read as we start breaking things out. Now, what we're going to say is if another number equals the number 1, then we'll use our ternary. But to keep things nice and readable, we'll drop this onto a new line as well. Here I'm going to say that the value is 1. Otherwise, the value will have no match. So let's go ahead and log out this another result. We won't save it for now because it will mess up all this formatting. But essentially, we want to look at how inside this particular block, because this question mark, remember, denotes our then block. So if another number does equal 1, this is going to be executed, else this is going to be executed. Now, the interesting piece, instead of having an else statement with no match inside of it, what we're going to do is create another else statement above, which takes another look at our another number and checks if it equals the number 99. Now, because this is a nested demonstration ternary statement, you can see that things start to spiral and start to look a bit more complex. Now, technically, what we have here is a nested if statement, so I can indent these just to show you that we're actually going inside of a ternary. So it's a ternary with a ternary inside. Now, again, instead of having no match here, we're going to replace this with looking at our another number equaling the number 1000. And then if that becomes true, we can then print out the word 1000. So if I go ahead and indent these, you can see that we have our first ternary statement. So think of it as if, then this piece of code runs, and then we have else if another number equals 99, then we display 99. Otherwise, again, that's not true. So we want to look at our another number again, and if it becomes 1000, otherwise it's going to have absolutely no match. So let's go ahead and save this out. So you can start to see here that as we progress and create more complex logic, things become a little bit more difficult to read. Now, this is essentially equivalent to an if another number equals 1, and then we have an else if another number equals 99, else if another number equals 1000. And then finally, we have an else where we would have that no match. So you can see that, yes, it is possible to do this, and we'll delete this so we don't get any errors. Yes, it's possible to do this, but as I mentioned, this syntax looks nice and clean. It's obvious what we're trying to achieve. We have an expression where we are checking that if, then else. So my advice would be to keep things nice and clean. It is possible. If you want to go ahead and start nesting ternary statements, feel absolutely free. But for complex logic, it's much easier to add things to an if statement with else if conditions. So that would be my recommendation. We know the ternary exists, we know how to use it, so let's carry on and dive into the next video.